Welcome back, guys. It's Chad, and we have a new guest for today's podcast episode. Go ahead and introduce yourself, new friend.
Hi, I'm Fufu. My name is Fudat.
Perfect, perfect. And we have a really interesting topic for you guys today. So, we're discussing something that may end up being a global phenomenon. As of right now, it is mostly a domestic phenomenon in the United States, where I'm recording from, and that is H5N1, the newest strain of the bird flu. There had been previous bird flu pandemics in the 2000s, as well as other SARS family infections. COVID, most notably recently, not that recently actually anymore, but it feels like it was recent. Was
Crazy.
the global pandemic of note that's in the SARS family? We also had swine flu around 2009 ish here in the United States. It was another big deal. Almost became a pandemic, or almost became an epidemic, localized to the country of the U.S., but got shut down quickly enough. And we had the actual SARS virus in the 2000s. It was in China or in Eastern Asia in general, but that one didn't explode and become crazy fatal. It had really high human mortality, but luckily it wasn't as infectious and it was shut down. Right
hmm
now, we have bird flu, avian flu. This version of the virus, which also, there have been several versions of bird flu, including one in the 1910s and one in the 1800s as well, that went global and killed a lot of people. This one, luckily, is not transmitting to humans much yet. There have only been about 65 reported cases of it crossing over to humans, and none of those were human to human infections. They were all animal to human, or in one case, there was a young boy who drank some raw milk and got infected through the milk. That's because while it isn't passing over to humans, mostly as of yet, it's very rare. It has worked its way into the cattle population, and there's
What do you mean, human to animal?
got it. So when it comes to infectious diseases like this, specifically viruses, they
hmm
start in one species. They are adapted. So a virus, it bonds to receptors and different proteins of a cell, of a certain type of cell in the human or in the host body of the organism it's adapted to. And different organisms have different cell structures, different builds. All the animals on Earth are very different in the way their cells are. So it's what makes us different animals to some degree. Is the fact that we are not identical genetically. So on a genetic level, this virus has to be adapted to bond to the cells of a particular organism. Now, different classes and families of organisms are more similar, so it's easier for a virus to jump from one type of animal to a similar type. For instance, this is called bird flu because it pretty much affects all birds. Right now in the US, it's going crazy in the chicken population because we have billions of chickens that are grown and raised as poultry or as egg layers here in the US, and it's spreading rapidly. One of the
What
reasons
does poultry mean?
poultry means birds that are eaten. So, chicken,
Oh, okay.
turkey,
Okay, okay.
duck is a poultry that's raised to be eaten. Chicken is the most common poultry, and it's the biggest one in the U.S. by
Yeah.
far that's reared. So the poultry farms in the U.S. have one of the reasons it spread so quickly among chickens in particular. You remember what I just said about genetic diversity among all the animals on Earth and
Yeah.
how we have different types? Chickens, specifically poultry chickens, chickens that are raised to be egg layers or to be eaten, are not genetically diverse at all. Through genetic engineering, starting with selective breeding hundreds of years ago, which we've done for the chicken. We've done for that chicken for thousands of years. The chicken's been with us for a while. It's like one of our companion animals, one of our livestock animals. But modern chickens
hmm
are even more genetically identical to each other because we've done a lot of things in the process of agriculture to make them as big as possible and as consistent as possible. We want all chicken that's chopped up and sold throughout the world to taste pretty similar. So pretty much all poultry chickens, especially factory farm chickens here in the U.S., are like almost clones of each other. Basically, they're genetic.
Wait,
But
factory farm?
factory farmed, FARM, farmed. Sorry,
Oh, okay.
yeah, a factory farm is it's
Sounds
industrial scale
creepy.
farming. So you have small scale local farmers, not local, just small scale farmers who are they have maybe a couple hundred chickens, maybe a dozen. So you can probably know somebody who has chickens in their backyard if you're in a country that has a hospitable climate for rearing chickens.
I have chicken.
You have chickens. There you go. So that's what I'm saying. You have a few chickens, but you're not a factory farm. Factory farms process chickens in the millions. One
Oh, okay.
one chicken farm recently in the U.S. in the month of July alone had to cull, which means they had to kill and get them out the way and just burn their bodies. But they had to cull
You.
2 million chickens in July alone because of the bird flu, because it had infected all of them, their meats, their eggs, everything. They were really messed up. So that's how
That's
that.
so sad.
That's sad. You said.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the realities of living in a world where meat consumption is industrialized to the extent that it is. It's one of the reasons veganism got so popular. It's because people saw all these factory farms and saw that one infection could tear through and cause the deaths of a couple million animals all in 1 month, just because of the system we have in place to deliver meat to consumers. But
Hmm.
vegan concerns aside, this has really big ramifications for the world at large, and specifically for humanity. Not trying to come off like I'm crazy or anything, but I'm to an extent I'm a human supremacist. I think human lives matter a little bit more to me, at least. In the grand scheme of things, if I have to put lives on a tier system, I'm putting humans up top. So yes, it's tragic that 2 million chickens were culled because of this virus, but it'll be a lot worse if 2 million humans die, or at least I personally will feel a lot worse. Maybe Peter disagrees, but 2 million humans dying in a month would really set off some alarm bells. And the way that I think that's most likely to happen as a result of this bird flu epidemic that could become a pandemic, at least within the poultry farming community, is not that it would cross over to humans and become incredibly fatal for us, because this virus does have a shockingly high fatality rate. It has about a 50% fatality rate, close to. And COVID, when COVID first came out and started affecting humans, people were really freaked out because COVID, they thought, had a 10% fatality rate. Now that we have enough data and to look back on, and we've seen millions of people unfortunately pass away, we can tell COVID probably had at highest 2 to 3%. But 10% would have been crippling to the world economy, to the world as a whole, not
Hmm.
just the economy, but just our survival of a species would have been, stunted and shattered, and our chances of, intergalactic dominance or whatever we're aiming for would have been a lot lower. This virus has a
Hmm.
50% fatality rate in birds and similar in other forms of livestock. It's crossed over to sheep, pigs, cows. Cows is especially concerning here in the U.S. because that's one of the biggest meats that is farmed, and milk is one of the largest, agricultural livestock adjacent products that is consumed not only domestically but is exported to be consumed to other countries. America has we are the cattle country. We are the cowboys of the world. We have all the cows, so it's it's going to be really, really interesting to see what happens. Also, some of these infections that I mentioned, where the H5N1 virus is crossing over to humans, a lot of those are coming from raw milk consumption. And raw milk is something that's lately become increasingly popular. Raw milk being milk.
How? Why? In what context?
Hard to get into that. It's very political. I'll say that much. Some people
Oh.
don't trust the pasteurization process, which we've used for the past 100 or so years to clean our milk. So you in theory can drink milk straight out the cow udder. It's possible. You know what I mean. It's not recommended though because there are certain bacteria, viruses. What this is a little
Yeah.
gross to say, but one of the common things I see cited by my friends who become vegan or embrace that is that the amount of pus per gallon of milk that's allowed to be in it, according to the FDA standards, the Food and Drug Administration here in the United States, the one who sets standards for food, is a little higher than a lot of people are comfortable with. If you ever go and look at an actual factory farm for milk production, a factory dairy farm where cows are milked constantly, and the way they're used. If you look at the machines and you see their udders once the machines are removed, there's a lot of times there'll be blood on them, open sores, pus. There, it can be a
Oh,
gross
wow.
process getting foods, particularly animal related foods, so eggs, milk, dairy products, and meat. Of course, it can be a gross process if you're not used to seeing that. And most people in the modern world are not used to. They haven't gone out there and milked their own cows or killed their own chickens, or you know what I mean, gone through that
Yeah.
process. So because people aren't used to that, it throws them off. But once again, people have gone so far removed from it now they feel as if it's unnatural to drink milk that's been pasteurized. Pasteurization is the process of heating up the milk to a certain degree so that all the bacteria inside of it are killed. It also denaturalizes some of the proteins in the milk. It makes them malformed. It takes out some of the nutritional value. So that is a legitimate concern, and that's one of the reasons raw milk has become increasingly popular. But with the gain in nutritional value that you get from drinking raw milk also comes an increased risk of infection to and exposure to certain diseases.
Yeah,
And
because isn't the whole idea of like heating up the milk is to get rid of bacteria?
absolutely, that's the bacteria, viruses, things, parasites, just in general, it's to get rid of things that could make you sick if you were to drink the milk.
Yeah.
Right. But let's get back on track here. The bigger subject is, of course, how is this going to affect humans? Um, Obviously, if a virus with a 50% fatality rate it jumped over to humanity and it adapted to the point where it could spread human to human, and it has a much wider spread than COVID, and it lasts much longer. So COVID, if it got outside the human body and landed on somebody coughed and the COVID inside their cough landed on a box of cereal at the grocery store, by the time you picked it
Hmm.
up and put it in your cart, you know, you probably wouldn't have any more COVID on it. The COVID had already died and was no longer able to infect humans. Bird flu is not
Hmm.
like that at all. They're actually telling you for about 3 months after a bird dies, its feathers will probably have live H5N1 on it. So if you touch a dead bird, if you're exposed to bird fecal matter and you shake it up, you're scraping it off the sidewalk, and some particles fly up into your nose because you don't have a mask on, probably about 3 to 6 months, you'll still be at risk because of that. And it has made the jump from chickens to the pigeon population in the U.S. And there's a lot of pigeons in major cities in the U.S. And they've done studies on wastewater, particularly in the San Francisco region. So in San Francisco, they have a mixed use sewer system. So when it comes to sewer systems, there's two types, and oftentimes they're all thrown together into one. Most major cities in the U.S. are like this, but San Francisco in particular, the sewer system for human waste that comes from like bathrooms and things like that, sinks,
Hmm.
human waste, that goes down to one set of sewers. In some cities, the street level gutters, the street level sewers that absorb, overflow from rain, dirt,
Hmm.
things on the side of the street, things of that nature. Sometimes those are separate sewers. In San Francisco, they're both. So a lot of
Wouldn't
chicken,
that stink?
yeah, yeah, it does. Sometimes some cities in America stink. That's welcome to the country. New York, famously, doesn't smell that great. A couple reasons for that,
Wow.
but in San Francisco in particular, look, there's a lot worse things in San Francisco. There's a lot of human waste along the streets. Like the homelessness problem is really out of hand there, and there's a lack of public restrooms. And if you're in San Francisco, the least of your worries is the smell coming from underground. There's a lot of smells above ground.
Oh wow.
But they've been testing the wastewater, and there's been extremely high levels of H5N1. They at first, some of the researchers thought, "Oh no, it's already jumping to humans. We just don't know. It's already in the population." But the general consensus that I'm seeing right now is actually, "Oh no, we're seeing this in San Francisco because it's mixed use sewage system,
Oh,
and
okay.
it's the
I get it.
pigeons are actually the ones who are infected, and that's why we're seeing so much H5N1 in the sewer system." Because that's what they do. They check
Okay.
wastewater for viruses a lot of time. That's one of the ways they used to track COVID.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And just, from personal anecdote, I always like to throw in a personal anecdote. I live in an area with a lot of pigeons, and I see I would say not quite double digits. There have been days I see double digits, but I will see just a lot more random pigeons dead on the ground lately. Obviously, I'm not picking them up. I don't want to get the virus from the feathers on me, but I do think that's possibly a vector for how it could spread. Is just some kid is going to
Is there
touch it.
like is there like any signs of like are they foaming at the mouth or like
They're not
do they
rabid.
look weird?
No, no, they're not rabid. They're just dead. They're just falling out of the sky dead. And
That's so
increasing.
sad.
Yeah, yeah, that's nature. I mean, animals die, but the pigeon population in the U.S. is definitely deeply infected. And back to the thing we were discussing at the beginning, it's the genetic relationship between birds and birds of different types is close enough that this can jump from pretty much any bird to any other type of bird. So chickens and pigeons both highly infected. The pigeon the pigeon infections are probably the most likely vector for it transmitting to humans. Though, I mean, we eat so many chickens and so many eggs as a world, as a global species, that There's a lot of different vectors to get to, but in my personal, it's my personal belief that it's not super likely to jump to human, and if it does, hey, we got bigger concerns. But I think the biggest impact that this could have for humanity is by devastating global livestock. And
Hmm.
as a society, I don't think we're ready for 8 billion people to all of a sudden turn to veganism and drop meat and poultry and eggs from their diet. I think we,
Yeah.
in large part, depend on the protein found in eggs, the protein found in chickens, beef, pork, whatever animals are eaten by society. We depend on those calories to keep people fed and alive, and just in general, good health and good nutrition. So I mean, like those stats I was giving earlier, where 1 month they were culling 2 million chickens at one farm, and they're doing that all throughout the U.S. now. China, in particular, they've said we will not allow chicken meat, any type of poultry, any type of eggs, any type of milk to come in from the U.S. Until this disease is brought under control, because it started in the U.S. So they're very aware of that, and they have 1 billion people to feed, so they know if it spreads and kills their livestock populations, it's really going to have some detrimental effects on their ability to be stable and cohesive as a society. But
Hmm.
let's go worst case scenario. Let's say it does spread that much, the global meat supply diminishes severely. A lot of people don't have food. We're going to have to eventually get to a point where we decide who can and who can't eat meat. I've always been a big believer that meat consumption in the world is too high, and that we need to take steps to adjust that. I think pushing a lot of people toward vegetarianism is a step towards that. I've also advocated for the idea that in order to eat meat in major developed countries, you should need to get a license for it, and part of the process for getting that license should be you should have to kill an animal yourself on a somewhat regular basis. I think factory farming has removed people from the reality of what eating meat, dairy, and eggs actually constitutes. Particularly meat
Hmm.
in general. I think some people are so far removed from the idea that they're eating something that had to be killed to sustain them. I think people should have to personally kill an animal in order to get a license to eat meat. And I think we're probably going to have to implement something like that if this virus continues to spread and continues to be as fatal as it's proving to be.
I I also think like cultural aspects should be like considered because a lot of cultures like have dishes where like their traditional dish contains meat, like mensaf in Jordan, for example. So I think that's and I think honestly, like to be able to kill like an animal, I think that's not fair because I won't do it, but I want to eat meat.
Yeah, sucks for you, buddy. I will say though, the other option I've been considering, sorry, joking with you, but the other option I would consider would be only young people should be allowed to eat meat. I think cutting
Yeah, that
off,
I can agree with.
yeah, because young
Wait,
people,
how young are we talking?
I personally, when it comes to stuff with cutting old people off for certain benefits of society, I like to set the number at 65. It's probably a very American centric view to have 65 as your cutoff, because all of our systems sort of kick in at 65. Medicare, Social Security, we have it all set up for 65 being the cutoff age. But I've always felt like 65 is a great number, just personally, because
Okay.
I feel like the drop off from your mid 60s into your 70s into your 80s, I feel like it's significant from that point on. Whereas I think maybe from 40 to 50, not a huge drop off. 50 to 60, a little bit bigger, but in general, every year from 20, 30, 40, 50, those decades aren't huge drop offs. After 65, I think we start seeing like, oh, 70 is old. Like when I meet people who are 70, I'm like, oh, this is an old person for sure. Like, yeah, you might not have much time left. So 65, no more meat.
Wow. What if someone who's 70 is listening to you right now?
Hey, like and subscribe. Maybe you can comment, and we can go back and forth. And you can change my opinion, but as of right now, I feel very locked in at the idea that if H5N1 continues to spread and it affects global livestock to such a degree where we have meat shortages and it has to be rationed, I believe old people should be at the back of the line, so far back that they
Wait,
probably
I have
never
a
get any meat.
question.
Go ahead.
Remember the chicken wing shortage?
I do remember the chicken wing shortage. I think we're about to have another chicken wing shortage. I think
Does this have to anything to do with it?
that
Like, is
was
it the same?
that was different. That was related to COVID. That was more related to supply lines, and how chicken is
Oh,
shipped all around the world. But this we are very likely in 2025 to have a chicken everything shortage. Wings, thighs, breast, it's all going to be in short
Yo,
supply.
that genuinely sounds like a nightmare. I'm not even kidding.
I mean, for some people that probably is. They probably wake up in the middle of the night thinking, "Oh my God, where are the chicken wings?" They're gonna have literal nightmares about it. The bigger concern is actually probably going to be eggs, though, because eggs are more commonly eaten than actual chicken globally around the world. A lot of vegetarians consume eggs still. They cut out all the meat, but they keep the eggs. Eggs are used in a variety of ingredients. I mean, every baker I know uses like 6 dozen a week or something crazy like that. And they're also required for vaccines. The modern way vaccines are formed require large single cells, and chicken eggs are the most readily available of those. So, part of the process for developing vaccines for different diseases does involve the use of eggs. So,
What do you think about vaccines?
I'm going to stay out of that one. I'm going to stay out of that one. I know some people who listen to us are on both sides of the debate regarding vaccines. I personally know people who tell me they listen
Really?
are pro and anti-vax. I received vaccinations when I was a kid. I'll say that. So hey, if I seem a little off to you, maybe that's why. If you're anti-vax and you're like, this guy's a little crazy, that might be why. Maybe it's also why I'm alive to discuss vaccines with you, though. So
Yeah.
I will say I'm glad we eradicated polio and smallpox because I would hate to have gotten polio. Like when I read old accounts of polio and people getting those the paralysis and the stunted legs and they have the crutches everywhere, I'm like, oh my God. So
Yeah.
thank God.
Genuinely sounds horrible. I okay, I'm not gonna get into it too, but my dad is an immunologist, so I'll just say that like vaccines. You know what? I'm not gonna gonna get into it. Hold on.
There it is. You've heard from the immunologist's daughter herself. Vaccines. Let's not get into it. Final. That's the final word of the day. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you guys all for listening. Once again, please like and subscribe. Also, if you are subscribed and you had notifications turned on, turn them off and then back on again if you would, please. A lot of people, I've moved some things around on my channel. A lot of people aren't getting notifications anymore. So if you do that, I would really appreciate it. Any final words from you, Farad?
No. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. She says, go get vaccinated, kids. All right. Have a great day.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
And eat as much chicken as you can when you can.